Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the MIT Museum. My name is Michael John Gorman. I'm the director, still somewhat new director of the MIT Museum, and we're really thrilled to welcome you this evening for a very special lecture and discussion with Hiroshi Ishii. So Hiroshi is someone who's really a pioneer and someone we're really thrilled to work with at the museum. I first got to meet Hiroshi 25 years ago, actually, in 2000, when I got to see his musical bottles in the MIT Media Lab. And I think at that time he had only been a few years at the Media Lab. Hiroshi is the founder of the Tangible Media Group at the MIT Media Lab. And we are thrilled that we have a freshly opened installation on the third floor of the museum called Radical Atoms, which explores Hiroshi's work and the work of the Tangible Media Group through three working installations, including Transform, Inform, and the Sand Interactive. You will actually have a special opportunity. You will be the first to see this in action immediately after this evening's discussion. So Hiroshi and some of his colleagues will actually be doing a demo in the museum on the third floor of these pieces in action. So that's something to look forward to after the presentation. So Hiroshi is the Jerome B. Wiesner Professor of Media Arts and Sciences at MIT, and he led, before he came to MIT, he led the computer-supported cooperative work research group at NTT Human Interface Laboratories in Japan, where he and his team invented the Team Workstation and the Clearboard. He has many degrees, including a PhD in computer engineering from Hokkaido University in Japan. Hiroshi will give a lecture which will really kind of present a survey of his extraordinary work, culminating in Radical Atoms. And then he'll be joined on the stage by Deborah Douglas, who is our director of collections here at the MIT Museum and is also curator of science and technology. Debbie has had positions at the Smithsonian's National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C., and also NASA Langley, the Chemical Heritage Foundation, and has curated many exhibitions on all aspects of MIT-related science and technology topics, including here at the museum. So we'll have Hiroshi's talk, we'll have a conversation between Hiroshi and Debbie, and a chance, of course, for all of you to ask your questions, and then we will relocate upstairs to experience Radical Atoms. Please join me in welcoming Hiroshi Ishii. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. It's extremely exciting to bring my machines, my babies. We spent so many years to build to this museum. So I can't really thank enough MIT Museum. It's an ideal place for us to show the marriage of science technology and also art and design. That is one of the important themes of today. So this is also kind of the opening of the Radical Atom exhibitions, for which many amazing people in the MIT Museum work together. I can't list all the names, but I want to really thank to all of them. So basically, three machines. Sandscape, that is one of the tangible bits, which evolved to the Inform and Transform, that shape display, dynamically moving dancing machine. So I'm very excited to go through all this stuff. But originally, I was in NTT before I came to MIT. I was doing telecommunications, telepresence, using audio-video technologies. But when Nicholas found this Clearboard, he invited me to give a talk in Atlanta. But when I got the job offer, he said, reboot, don't continue the previous work, like a Clearboard, telepresence. So I have to start something radically new. That's the Tangibits. I started the Tangibits 1995, then which evolved to Radical Atoms, because atoms, materials, should be more dynamic and free from the constraints. So that's a trajectory I'm going to talk today. Also later, upstairs, you will see the evolution from Sandscape, Inform, and Transform. And in parallel, also I'm continuing the research about telepresence, how to connect people mediated by technology. So tangible telepresence is one of the examples, which also you will see upstairs using an inform machine. We are now working in the final project called teleabsence. That's a bit crazy project, but telepresence for your past and also afterlife. How to communicate people who are already gone, departed, and the fading memory. That is one of the challenge we're doing. But today we focus on to the work, tangibits and the radicotomos. Also, I can't thank enough all the students, but we work so many hours forgetting about the time, but based on the passion. So sharing a dream, sharing the vision is so important, making very strong team. But I was very inspired by many people. I met so many great gurus in my field. Douglas Engelbart is definitely my heroes. Also Mark Weiser, good friends, and also hero, UbiComp. Then Bill Mitchell. I was so fortunate to be able to interact with those real experts who guided me. Also, I have a lot of good friends. So I think finding the people which inspire you, then interact, learn from each other is one of the most amazing benefits of being academians. There's no boundaries. Artists, scientists, designers, any discipline come together. So let me start with Clearball. This is a classic system I invented 30 years ago with Minoru Kobayashi at NTT Humanities Laboratories. Now you can see I'm drawing like a drafting table. Then my partner can see me looking at anywhere. So this is beyond eye contact, but it's called gaze awareness. You can clearly see what your partner is looking at. Today, still Zoom, Microsoft staff or Google do not provide even eye contact, but they're very keen about how to really provide informal cue, like a gaze. Gaze really tell a lot in the non-verbal communications. So this is a work I've done 30 years ago. But Alan Kay and Nicolas Negropontes found this work. Then he invited me to the Vanguard conference in Atlanta in 1994. Then right after my talk, they asked me to come to MIT. So I thought it's a PhD program, but he said I have to teach. Also later fundraising. But that's kind of the beginning. And I never studied in US. I never teach in a university. So it's a big challenge. But I moved from NTT to MIT Media Lab in 1995. Then I started my research group. But one condition Nicolas asked me is reboot. Do not continue the work I've done before. Life is short. That's a real luxury to reinvent yourself. It's the craziest advice for non-tenured professor because I've done a lot of work in telepresence, but now I have to start something brand new. But we're lucky because he's a kind of the guru to really being digital. He really stressed the superiority of digital, being digital, and the bits. Then I started counter movement, being tangible, because we are tangible being. We are living in the physical world. If everything becomes pixel or virtual, it doesn't make sense. So this is a kind of dialogue of Nicolas. But this is a very important theme about bits and atoms, or physical world and the digital world. Constantly, the pendulum is swinging. So his book, Being Digital, is very powerful to push to digital domain. But I try to push back through tangibility papers to bring back tangibilities. But then VR, AR came. Then metaverse, a huge hype. Then pushing to the virtuals. But also I was invited in the Barcelona's the conference called Puzzle X. They coined the term metaverse. Metaverse matters, not the metaverse. Matter means real stuff. So anyway, this is constantly moving around because we live in both worlds. Tangibits is represented by this abacus. How many people can compute using abacus? Oh, good. Abacus is a very powerful symbol because all the digits are represented as the beads which you can touch and manipulate. So that's the tangibits. Second, affordance. If you grab the abacus, then shake it, become a musical instrument. Then, if you're kids, you can play as an imaginary train. Then you can also scratch back if itchy. You do not need to read any manual written by Apple, Google, or Microsoft engineer because this kind of affordance, simple affordance. Simple mechanical structure, trunk structure has a beauty or legibility that's missing today because silicon inside the black box being digital. So in 1997, I wrote the first papers with brick armors, my students in MIT Media Lab. And this is basically grounding theory of the tangible bits. And luckily, this became more cited papers in my communities, ACM circular, in the past 30 years. And, but the also important thing is I met Mark Weiser. Mark Weiser is a father of ubiquitous computing. And he really did amazing project in a Xerox PARC. But my paper was almost rejected. But Mark and Jim Horan rescued my papers. Then he sent a very nice message that I recently had a chance to read your Kai papers, 100 bits. Great work. In my opinion, this is the kind of work that characterizes the technological landscape in the 21st century. Next sentence really shocked me. I do have a request. My request is that you help me to stop the spread of misunderstanding of ubiquitous computing based simply on its name. He was really struggling. People do not understand the philosophy of BibComp. Just a bunch of the machine, but that's not what he meant. Then he proposed 100 bits is very nice, and maybe it could serve as an overall umbrella. But then you might lose it as a name of your own research project. So I try to really differentiate my work from Mark Weiser's BibComp as much as possible. But in the end, he pointed out that we share the same dream and the vision. That's my treasure, one of the most encouraging like a message I got in my professional careers. So hope you guys also find Mark Weiser. So Orari is a very powerful, beautiful medium and representing knowledge of solar systems. People observe the star moving, then understand the mechanisms of the solar system. Then this Orari is a beautiful models that the human built using physical materials. Also, there's a handle you can grab and rotate. Then solar system movement becomes part of your body. Your neuron systems, muscle and bone all react to the movement. So that's a really engaging coupling. This embodied coupling seldom happens in smartphone or computer because the body is detached. And also important thing is you can see where your friends or teachers looking at or pointing at. So these are all kind of gaze awareness, which is missing in a video conference today. So many things we can learn from a historic scientific instruments museum where all the people basically abandoned beautiful artifact went to digital pixel. We are very lucky that 3 years ago, 2022, we had the opportunity to showcase the soundscape. And this is one of my most favorite pictures because those girls really love it. Then they came back again with their friends. And so our dream is to invent new tangible interaction that inspire and engage people. That's a really important goal for me as an interaction designer. So this is a very early system called UP. You see the building models, but the turn on the light, then you see the shadow. But this shadow is a digital shadows, not optical shadows. Then you can move the sun, position of sun, moving in time. Then you can also see that how shadow may sweep. Also, you can change these inter-shadow problems. You can really explore those inter-shadow issues. Also, you can change the surface glass. Then use the reflection of the lights. And fluid dynamics, something very beautiful. So how wind blow through the buildings is something you can emulate using this kind of stuff. So important thing, rather than showing the canned animations or videos, it's very important inviting people to put their hands on, then to explore how happens about the shadow or wind or traffic. So this is an app using a fast compelling, tangible interface to let people explore urban planning. This is another system called Soundscape, which actually we've been demonstrating here for 3 years. Then it's now meet other system. But you can see the vectors. All the vectors show how water run down, the speed and the direction. So landscape design is not just a beauty, but also functionality about water drainage. And this also kind of very popular in Ars Electronica. We exhibited in 2001. Engaging people is something so important. Maybe from this point of view, this IO brush is the best project. Kimiko Ryokai, she's now a professor in UC Berkeley, co-invented this system. It's a paintbrush, but have a camera inside, then pressure sensors and the light source. So pushing this brush to your dog, then capture the color and the texture. Important things, you can make color using RGB, but touching real flowers or peoples or fabric, a huge fundamental difference. Whole foods, you can buy all the fruits, but all the fruits become a palette to make new paintings. So important things, using digital, we can add some functionality from where the color came from. Now you can see teddy bear, from which color came from. So knowing the origin from where it came is very important, and also where it goes. But the most exciting part is this one. We talk to kids. This is basically memory, history. But she doesn't care. She uses her creativity, creative interpretation. She's very happy about her discovery of the recordings and sound. Also, we do a lot of the artistic stuff. This is how many of you do electronic music, digital music? So this is a audio part. So blue icon, physical icon, represent microphone. Then also all the parameters can be controlled by 4 hands because 2 musicians working together. So visualizing all the stuff happening inside the machine, then projecting this onto the wall. But this is a multi-hand interaction, which also inspired many people. And React Table, Sergio the team in Barcelona took this idea to next level. They make a React Table, which became products, and many famous musicians use on the stage. So I'm very happy to see dissemination. Also, I like a ping pong. How many people play ping pong? Seriously. I don't know if museum has a ping pong table, but the ping pong is also interesting work. So we try to make a surface of the architecture. In this case, tabletop as an interactive surface between digital and the physical. So detecting a ball hit, then triangulate, then we can make a fish swimming. And the center, you can continue the rally to make comets. And the light one is to create thunderstorm. You have to cooperate to continue. So this is kind of social media we invented before Facebook came to the market. So bits and atoms is a very powerful metaphor that Nicolas Negroponte invented. But we are in a seashores, half submerged into the waters, means digital world. But still body exists in the physical world. That's something important challenge. But now many people very excited to become a deep sea diver, wearing so many gadgets to go to the deep sea. And I have a different dream to become explorers along the seashore. This is Sorora's paintings by Spanish painters. He wrote his wife and the daughters strolling the seashores, chatting, seeing each other, enjoying the breeze of the seashore, also picking up a seashell to talk. So that's the part I really want to see happen, rather than diving into deep sea. That's why we started Tangirbits. But Tangirbits has some problems because physical art is kind of frozen materials, so it doesn't really dynamically change based on the computation, progress of computation. So today, there are two materials, frozen atoms, like these wood or plastic or fluorous. But other stuff is intangible pixel. So those are also pixels stuck in 2D screen. You can see it, but you cannot grab it. So we dreamed to invent new material called radical atoms. That is dynamic, physical, and the computational materials that transform and change property driven by computation. It's kind of a crazy stuff, but we did an exploration using simple toy robot stuff. Then this abstract concept is very tough to be acknowledged in academia, but Alucetronica, Linz, Austria, they have an amazing community of the media artists. They picked up these radical atoms as an entire umbrella of the Alucetronica Festival in 2016. Then Gerfried Stocker, he's the director, gave a nice subtitle, The Alchemist Over Time. So let's become alchemists, make a gold or diamond, whatever. They're using this material for your artistic expression, rather than using a paintbrush ink given by teacher or parents or Adobe. So interesting to invent new materials. Then we did a 3 years exhibition, including Inform over there. Then we featured all kind of stuff. But that is kind of beginning of radical atoms. So now let me show the Inform. This is maybe one of the most known application of tangible telepresence. Being here and being there is a dream of a human being. But the video conference, you still have a screen separating. You cannot really physically co-present. So this is a machine that Daniel Reitzing, Sean Former, and many, many amazing students, Europe, work together to build it. Now you can see the red ball is moving, but also you can make a special interface. So also this is a machine pushing the ball to move around. Also you can do the design so that this can be 3D product design. But the important thing is this is dynamic. So you know 3D printing. 3D printing is kind of frozen atoms, but this is not frozen. It's dancing, still computing dynamically. So making material dynamic in both virtual world and the physical world. So this is a Inform, but also has amazing, very complex machines. It took 2 years to build from scratch, but thanks to amazing engineering kind of students who helped. So we made a new version called the Transform to connecting 3 machines, making a kinetic triptych. And this is Francis Bacon's painting. But I'd like to show the Transform, which we exhibited in Milan Design Week in 2014. So this machine responds to the data from sensor or computation. Basically, you can do anything as pixel. If you're a programmer, you can make a pixel dance in a 2D flat screen or HMD. In a similar way, you can design interactive experiences or game, or many possibilities exist. But also we have a very crazy idea of defy gravity, because we are stuck on the ground because of gravity. But we seldom ask why we have to follow the gravity. So this is a Xeron. Junari and Remy Post co-invented. There's a material called Xeron, which you can put in the air, then stay there. Second, computer knows exact location. Third, computer can move it. So using this new material called Xeron, it's most radical atoms, you can really design the furniture floating in the air. So this is a very conceptual exploration, but we like astronomy, so we modeled the 3-body problems, which also happen to be the famous sci-fi movie. So bio is a new interface. That's something Lineals, GFAO, and our team came up with ideas. So how we can go beyond the human-machine interface? How can make human living machine interface? So we cultivated bacteria, Bacillus subtilis natto bacteria, and in a wet lab. So those bacteria can become sensors and also the actuators to control the airflow of the garment. So now you see that the biological garment is open the flap based on the heat or sweat. But the best is actually dancers. We invited the Boston dance company's professional wear this garment. She told me that she felt the airflow changes when she danced. Then also she changed the way she danced. Then she told me that it's like she's dancing with natto bacteria, which is very, very artistic, poetic, but you can't write any scientific papers. It's very poetic. So to summarize what my group has been doing in the past 30 years is invent and inspire. Of course, we can invent technology, file a patent, but unless you inspire, it doesn't exist. To do so, we have two important things: be artistic and analytic, and be poetic and pragmatic. So how to strike the balance between this tension is very, very important. But we are lucky because being MIT, also middle, we really celebrate this kind of collision of different way of thinking. Also, art and sciences is something very, very important because our program is called Media Art Sciences. And key is how to really go this spiral very quickly. Once you come up with the idea, how you may manifest this idea as a science, technology, but also art and design. So if you can really represent your visions in all 4 dimensions, then go through this spiral very quickly, you can really develop very crazy ideas. So I like this image of the Bruegel's Babel's Tower of Babel by Peter Bruegel, the elders in Austria, because I believe that building spiral tower of the Babel, transdisciplinary study that transcends art, design, science, technology is an important way to go to break the molds and go beyond. So we are very happy, even academic community like Kai, they appreciate this tangible stuff. Now big conference called Tangible Embedded Embodied Interaction Conference happening every year. Next month I go to France to attend this conference. So we really care about the vision. Vision matters because technology gets obsolete in 1 year, goes to landfill, needs constantly changing, but the vision which can shed the light for the future for many, many years beyond our lifespan. So the future is not to predict, but invent, that Alan Kay said long ago. But to do so, we need the 3 things: envision, embody, and inspire. Reflecting back, what's the principle, discipline is so important? Then arts play most important role for envision, also inspire part. Of course, we are MIT, so technology is very important, design, and of course science is a basic. But thinking about the importance of the art is something very, very critical. So today, I'm very happy to give you the chance to show the work on the 3rd floor, but also talking about the context, why we're doing this stuff. But my plan is I go to different places soon. Maybe all are together, or some may survive much longer. But I always talk to my students and myself that life never ends by our death. But 2200 still people living on this planet. And what do you want to leave for them is important meta question. Because life has set end point. But the future is never ending. Beyond our lifespan, we have to really design the world. Also technology, which we love and hate, soon become obsolete. That's a reality. but the true vision is everlasting. That's the reason we care about the high-level vision to shed the light. So 2 questions to you guys. What do you want to pass on to those living in 2200? And how do you want to be remembered as creators or inventors or thinkers? So with the number 2200, I'd like to end my talk. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you.
Well, Hiroshi, you anticipated my first question for you. We've been having a 7-year conversation now,
Yeah,
a long time, about the challenges of preserving your vision, preserving your lab's artifacts, preserving the user interface experience, preserving magic and wonder. And I wondered if you might amplify your thoughts on that question of preservation and what you see as some of the challenges that we face here in a museum.
Museum usually means paintings or sculptures, all frozen atoms. Of course, digital videos, but behind the 2D screen. But as you saw the 2 girls so excited by the soundscape, that's one of the real highlights. They're really engaged. They're really captivated. They also want to show to their friends. Parents want to go home, but they want to stay longer. So also airbrush is another example. So those moments happen from really being in a loop. You do touch, something happens. Also interpersonal conversation, because conversation discussion is so fun. But if one person is gone, nowhere. So how to really preserve interactive experience, something so important in the media arts, interactive art, but also for science, many amazing accomplishment is frozen atoms and the signage. But I really want to see how the engineer or scientist who used, interact with these materials. Even hope he or she invite us to touch it. So preservation of interactivity is very important, but so difficult because machine get obsolete. And the CPU worked 30 years ago. It's not even available. And even for this exhibition, we have amazing people like Dan Levin over there. He's amazing technical guru, also conceptor, and he helped also Jonathan. He and Paula all helped to restore using a modern technology, same concept, restoring. So keep restoring, keep rebuilding is something important. But then question is authenticity. Is it real, original, for example? So these are really interesting research question. How to preserve interactive experience and excitement for next century. So
I'm struck by the thought you have just stimulated in my brain here for a moment that if I reflect on my bicycle that's now 22 years old, the only things on that are the same as when I purchased it is the frame, one rim, and one portion of the crank.
I see.
Everything else is new. Now, I think of that as my bicycle. And so this is an epistemological question here. In our constant updating and revising and modifying your artifacts with the goal of preserving this user interface, do we lose something of the original?
I see.
And so is there a moment at which we say no more, or what does originality mean to you?
Interesting, because if it's the original paintings, you are not allowed to modify. But I play ping pong. Ping pong paddle is very interesting because made of the soft wood. So when you bite, first you adjust it, But after using many, many years, the hard training, the paddle itself changing a shape. So co-evolution of the tools in the hands or body, like a bike, is something also very beautiful. So rather than freezing to the original shape, how this co-evolves. Also, there's a great book, Building Evolves, because people changing all the stuff. This museum may also reconfigure many, many things. So I think interaction needs co-evolution of the humans and the architecture or tools or vehicles. So that's another thing we should really preserve to record. I know it's very difficult.
Well, I'm thinking we need some new rules. If you think about those paintings or sculptures, a body of knowledge and a whole group of professionals has evolved over time that tells us this is how you preserve this painting, or this is how you handle an archaeological relic. But working with you over the last couple years as we've been thinking about the challenge of preserving the physical and digital, I've realized that all of those rules go right out the window. Mm-hmm. And so I wondered if you had some advice or recommendations for us as to thinking about what should the new rules be? What should we concentrate on in our effort to preserve your work or the work of your colleagues at the Media Lab?
This is still like a half-baked idea, but original. This is original. This is done by this person. Then usually if person passed away, then foundation family said, don't change anything and try to keep as it was. But if it's interactive machine, people have to rebuild using a modern technology because like a Namjoon Paik's artwork, but also this tube, like a TV screen, is not anymore available. So evolving, basically, concept should still there, but authenticity or originalities or permission, legal ownership should be really considered so that the artist should allow the future in 100 years, our descendants should have the right to rebuild based on the basic concept idea, but using modern technology. But also, we should give how can I say, authenticity. So I approve you as a kind of descendant of a machine. So it's a new kind of cultures, new kind of legal system, which I think hope we can study or discuss with any of you to develop a new framework.
I want to speak about another legacy because you are not just making machines and physical artifacts. You are inventing a new design paradigm, a new method.
Yeah.
You have distinctive techniques for teaching. I suspect a few of your students are here sitting on the risers before us,
yeah.
But I wondered if you might share with us a little bit about your thoughts of how to preserve this teaching method and techniques and, well, I'll leave it at that. How do we preserve a teaching style and a design method?
It's a very interesting question because no method or recipe to stay still. It's constantly evolving like a spiral. So like impermanence is an important principle of the Buddhism. Everything keeps changing, never stay as it was. So how to really flow, natural flow, to make method, paradigm, framework evolve is important. To keep evolving, you have to reinvent ourselves. So rather than get stuck in specific dogma or method or teaching method, we should be always keep eyes open. Then full of the curiosity, so gazing star, then we should really dream up something radical. Also in academic world, originality is most important. We have to do something very original. it's not just different, but original. So that to invent something new requires you to trash some old method approach. So hope more people can enjoy to rebooting, as Nicolas Negroponte asked me 30 years ago.
So you've had a lot of partners, students and
Yes.
other faculty members and
Yes.
researchers in industry or here at
Yeah.
MIT. I wondered if you might share a story or two about some of those partnerships or projects that you've worked on. I know you've done, for example, a great deal of work with the Sensible Cities Laboratory. And I wondered if you might give us a little more detail about how those partnerships came to be, how they evolved, how they shaped you, how you shaped them.
I think MIT Media Lab is a part of School of Architecture and Planning. And the late Bill Mitchell is an amazing guru. So he already taught us so many about what is an important issue, challenge in urban planning, landscape design. Then we built a soundscape. Then we addressed 3 issues out of 5. Then he was very excited. So guidance of the domain expert to understand real issue and challenge. Also, I learned water drainage is one of the most complex, important issue in landscape design, which I didn't know at all. But that's the reason we starting an estimate of how water run down, how to manage water stuff. And also Bill Mitchell invited 3 Harvard famous professors. And all the people complain, this is missing, that is missing. But we saw they're all engaged to see the soundscape. So tangibility is very powerful. Also, everybody used to be the kids in the sandbox we played. Of course, you can do 3D math or complex 3D CAD software, but it's a pleasure to touch in the materials. So I learned so much from architects, urban planners, in the same way also engineers. And for example, Dan Levin taught me so many amazing advanced technology from microcontrolling, also mechanical stuff. And also people do robotics, has amazing deep knowledge. But also psychology. Psychology is something why tangibility, tactility, embodied interaction is important. So we learned so much in collaboration with the psychologist. Kimiko Ryokai, who invented the eyebrush, has a background is psychology. So being at MIT or academia is amazing. You can meet amazing students, recruit, then work together. So maybe I learned so much from them.
So some labs at MIT, the work done by students has an immediate and practical outcome. You're going to build this device that will fly on the space shuttle, or that device or gadget that will allow us to better understand a particular phenomena, or I'm going to study this gene or splicing. But your work is a little different from those. And am I correct in asserting that you are really, with your students' projects as master's or PhD students, that you're really trying to teach them a new way of conceptualizing the design process?
Yes. Coming up, the new question, which nobody ever asked, is the most precious. If you want to improve the lifespan of the battery, of course you can study all the chemical stuff, lithium, all the stuff, but the concept of battery was already invented many, many years ago. You can never be remembered as an inventor. You may improve this year, but next year, maybe MIT material scientists, people go ahead that. So, because life is short, why don't you try to do something which only you can do it, and the most radical one. So, problems solving engineers, understanding nature a bit better, both very, very valuable research, but coming up with new vision. Basically, our most important outcomes are vision, tangible bits, radical atoms. Now, teleabsence is very crazy, but coming up with new vision, then vision becomes like an eyeglass people wear subconsciously, through which they see the new possibility in the world. So my work is very unique and not easy to really make a formula or recipe, but through the discussion and the invention and the observation of the world, we come up a lot of the crazy question.
So can you tell us a little bit about some of those students? This is a chance for you to brag on some of the achievements of your students. And also, I understand that there are some movies out there or Disney that have taken advantage of some of the ideas that they've seen in your labs and been inspired. And I wondered if you might share some of that sort of second generation work of how your work has influenced current design practices.
I think Black Panther is a movie who took the idea of the shape display. And usually movie maker doesn't credit, but one guy blogged and he mentioned he saw my machine that you will see today in the media lab. Then he got the idea of dynamic shape-changing stuff. That's really great. And also, I see many students in TMG in my group. And I think it's very great because every student bring a new perspective and different life, different cultural background. But also now, AI is a new language, for example. AI is impacting everything. So seeing new students, learning their new perspective, but still keep polishing the vision, like tangible bits, radical atoms, is something so fruitful because new application, new technology always shape our vision to move forward. Then we are now doing a most crazy project called teleabsence to go beyond telepresence. So that we really appreciate students' input to conceptualize, but also making an instance of the design that the people can experience.
I'd like to give people in the audience the opportunity to join this discussion and perhaps ask your questions. And Kate Silverman-Wilson has a microphone which will help us in for everyone to hear.
Yes, Hiroshi, you've mentioned a few times teleabsence and
yes.
said that this is quite a wild concept. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about what do you have in mind when because all of us are familiar with telepresence, but maybe not everyone is familiar with teleabsence.
Telepresence is about distance, how to overcome distance using a telecommunication technology. But when you interact through telepresence system, both must be alive. Both must be responsible. But when people get older, aging, loneliness is a big problem. Loneliness is a pandemic of this planet because fading memory. We met so many people when I was young, like teachers in junior high school. He encouraged me to study English, for example. Also the girl, which I fell in love long ago. But we basically drifted away. I don't know where they are, even they are alive. Even I can remember the face very clearly. But so many people we met, then I want to meet again to say thanks or sorry. One of them is my parents. I lost my parents, but I really wanted to talk to her. Then she can't respond, she's dead, but still I want to have some illusory communication. Also, after I'm gone, I want my students to remember, or in 100 years, some people read my papers, then talk about the teleabsence or tangible bits. So fundamentally, desire, longing is two. I want to always remember you. I always want to be remembered by you. So by you means afterlife. And remember you is the past. But we now designing a system to really expand those telepresence space axis to teleabsence time axis. Then we have a piano, mirror fugue, and Miller Fugue, many people played piano. Then Ghost is living in the piano. Then recently, last June, we rebuilt after 13 years, Dr. Xiao Xiao's invention. But how many of you know Ryuichi Sakamoto? He actually visited 2013 my lab. So we recorded he plays Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. He's living still in the piano. So I brought him back from heaven to our piano. They inviting 20 pianists to watch, to experience, or duet. So that's very, very touching and moving. So it's a past recording, but through piano, keys moving, you can do duet. You give a possibility of illusory communication with a person who passed away. That's a teleabsence.
Hi, Professor Ishii. I'm Ethan, here with two of your students,
Yes.
my friends.
Pleasure to meet you guys. Yeah.
Yes. I have a question about the motivation to going tangible. Is it more of like an emotional motivation that you think there needs to be more tangible things in life, or do you think it's because of the digital things are taking it away? And is this like rationally driving or more like emotionally driving to you that you believe that we need more tangible things and tangible interaction in the world? And where does that come from?
That's a very good question. There are two different answers. Social touch is so important. COVID-19 crisis forced us to keep a social distance. In a deathbed, when you see your grandma, you can't touch, you can't hug it, unless you have a very special seat, curtain. It's very sad. Touch is something important. Video conference is very powerful, but if you want to encourage somebody, tapping the shoulders or shaking hands, or if appropriate, hugging is so important. So from this sense of touch is very critical. Also, orally, I show the models of the solar system. Grabbing the handles, moving, you become part of solar system machine. This experience is also so important, embodied interaction. So tangibility and touch means a lot. But the definition of tangible is not just you can touch it. You can really believe the existence as a more profound philosophical word. If you have a keychain in the pocket, every time you sit, you feel it. You can also confirm, okay, I haven't lost my key, I have a key. But in a crowd, how many cookies you have? How many keys you have? How many might have already hacked, for example? So peace of the mind, of tangibility, and the social interaction, also embodied interaction. There's so many things. And so fundamentally, we are physical beings. So that we are, rather than go to the completely virtual world through small touch screen, there might be a way to bring computation back to physical world, across the body. That's something I dreamed 30 years ago through tangibility paper. Thank you for very good questions. That's very fundamental. Why tangible?
Hi. You talked about the tangibility of objects and stand up. Okay. Hi.
Yeah.
You talked just right now about the tangibility of objects and how we can feel them and have peace of mind in our evolving world. And now that everything is becoming less tangible,
Yes.
how do you feel that big technology companies can be inspired to be more tangible? And I would also add that now artificial intelligence is less and less embodied in person. It's more about talking to a computer or writing to ChatGPT. Do you feel that we can evolve to social robotics as seen here in the exhibition? Or do you feel it will less happen? And what do you think the future holds in that sense?
I think when I gave a talk, 2019, when I got the Lifetime Research Award, my title of my talk is Making Digital Tangible. battle against Pixel Empire. Pixel Empire is so strong, shadow is so deep, even more deeper, more darker, because this is so easy to transfer and very functional. And of course, you have to abandon something joy of the handwriting. But still, we eat, we walk the street, forest, go to sightseeing, but most of the structured part or generative AI kind of stuff is going to virtual. Still, IO transducer can be tangible. So I think battle against Pixel Empire is uphill battles. We never win. Also, I'm not fighting to win, but at least I want to show there's a very different way of thinking to challenge to the seashore between bits and atoms. So that we want to show very original effort. But one of the former students, Adam Kung, told me that Hiroshi, perfect virtual reality and the perfect radical atoms are indistinguishable. That's very profound. I never thought about, but we might be aiming at the complete perfect fusion of physical and digital using radical atoms approach or VR or metaverse approach. So that's very exciting. So let's see how we can continue the battles. Yeah, thank you.
So my question is, I tell my dad about a lot of your work, and my dad is very aligned with your thinking. When you speak of teleabsence, is there a few things in nature that kind of echo that can like embody that, because it's so poetic, you know, it's something
Yes.
like a mountain would be like an obvious thing for me that I would think that's kind of teleabsence.
Yes.
Do you have some objects like this in nature?
Yeah, nature, so many things lost, but I always think about history. Like World War II made a huge impact to my mother's, also father's lives. But we shouldn't really forget how this happened, why we couldn't prevent it from happening. But still, it's always happening. So that when I was kids, my father was survivor of the Lagery, Siberia. He became a soldiers in Manchuria, then captured by Russian army because Russia invaded Manchuria after the World War II ended. Then he was captured in Siberia, and it's a hell. But because after the war ends legally, he was not really acknowledged as a war prisoner. But then he survived and came back to Japan, Maizuru port. Then he married my mom. And when my mom cooked fish, he ate everything except for bone, heads, guts. And so I told Daddy that it's so disgusting, so nasty. Why you eat everything? But now I understood. At first 500 milliseconds, you have to know this is edible or not. Second, you have to jump on to eat. Next 500 milliseconds to survive. So that is a hell. He survived. We are lucky. We never starved because we have stuff to eat and drink. However, intellectually, do we have this kind of the real hunger or thirsty? So always I remember that our ancestors, including my parents, went through amazing world, which also built that we are enjoying, but also in elsewhere, people fighting. And so now somebody talked about AI. Many people talk about responsible AI, ethical AI, but I think it's a joke. AI cannot be ethical or responsible. People who develop and use those machines is not ethical, irresponsible. That's reality. So weaponization of technology it's really, really scary to see advancement of AI like that. So, lot of things you have to really think about. But I think we can really find a lot of things, presence of absence. Something was there. Like many books are not anymore published. So these are kind of presence of absence. But the most important thing is history, how we should remember and learn from the history, not repeating the same mistake. That's my thoughts.
So we've come to the moment where we should stop talking and start experiencing, and to really have the joy of seeing 3 iconic works out of your lab. The presentation gave you a sense of just even only a third, I think, of the many projects that have come out of the Tangible Media Group. But I hope you'll join me now in thanking Hiroshi for a most stimulating presentation and subsequent conversation. It's really an honor to have you here, and it's been an incredible journey and privilege for me to work with you all these years. So thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you.